I was standing in our kitchen when my wife dropped the bomb that would end our marriage in the most spectacular way possible. The granite countertops gleamed under the pendant lights, our open-plan living space looking like something out of a home design magazine. Everything perfect on the surface, just like Marin preferred it. "I'm pregnant," she announced, not looking up from her phone where she was scrolling through what I assumed were work emails. Always work emails with Marin, even at 9:30 at night. I set down my coffee mug and waited for the follow-up. The excitement, the discussion about our future, maybe even a hug. Instead, she kept typing. "That's wonderful news," I said, though something in her tone made my stomach clench. "When did you find out?" "This afternoon. I told Roger first since he deserved to know before anyone else." She finally looked up, her expression casual, like she'd just mentioned picking up dry cleaning. "He was so supportive about the whole situation," Roger Bledsoe, her boss at the hospital group where she worked as an administrator, the same Roger who'd been calling her for emergency meetings at odd hours for the past 6 months. The same Roger, whose name appeared on her calendar more often than mine. I felt something shift inside me, like tumblers falling into place in a lock. The late nights, the weekend conferences, the way she'd started showering immediately when she got home. The pieces weren't just fitting together, they were forming a picture so clear it could have been painted in neon. "How wonderful that the real father found out first," I replied, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Marin's fingers stopped moving on her phone screen. "What did you say?" "You heard me." I pulled out my own phone and opened our shared calendar. "Should we check some dates? Maybe cross-reference them with your sudden interest in working late?" Her face went pale, then flushed red. "Tanner, you're being ridiculous. Roger is my supervisor. Of course I told him first. This affects my work schedule, my projects, my—" "Your what? Your ability to keep screwing him in his office?" I scrolled through the calendar entries, matching her late meetings with the nights she'd come home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "Or maybe we should talk about that conference in Austin where you forgot to mention the hotel only had one reservation under your names." She stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "You've lost your mind. I'm pregnant with your child, and instead of being happy, you're creating some insane conspiracy theory." I laughed, and even I could hear how hollow it sounded. "My child? Marin, we haven't had intimate relations in 3 months. You've been too tired, too stressed, too busy with all those emergency meetings, but apparently not too busy for Roger." "Stop saying his name like that." Her voice had gone shrill, defensive, the same tone she used when the HOA president caught her parking in someone else's spot. I opened my laptop right there on the kitchen island and started typing. "You know what? You're right. I should be celebrating. In fact, I think I'll start by canceling our anniversary cruise. Seems like you'd rather spend romantic getaways with your boss anyway." "Tanner, don't you dare—" But I was already logged into our travel account, clicking through the cancellation process. $15,000 down the drain, but watching Marin's face crumble made it worth every penny. "There," I said, closing the laptop. "Now you'll have more time for prenatal appointments with the real father. I'm sure Roger will be thrilled to hold your hand through morning sickness." She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage, of someone who'd been caught and was furious about it. "You're making a huge mistake," she whispered. "When you calm down and realize how wrong you are—" "I won't be here for that conversation." I pulled up another website on my phone, one I'd bookmarked months ago when her behavior first started changing. "Look at this. I can file for divorce online. Isn't technology amazing? Same technology that syncs all your text messages and calendar entries to our shared cloud storage." Her face went white again. "You wouldn't. Watch me." I started filling out the forms, entering our information with the same methodical precision I used for IT security audits at work. Name, address, grounds for dissolution of marriage. Adultery was right there in the drop-down menu, like they'd been expecting this exact scenario. Tanner, please, let's talk about this rationally. You're upset, I understand that, but… Rationally? I looked up from the screen. You mean like how you rationally decided to tell your lover about his child before telling your husband? That kind of rational thinking? She tried a different approach, her voice going soft and pleading. I made a mistake. Yes, I should have told you first about the pregnancy. But you're wrong about everything else. Roger and I work closely together, that's all. The late nights, the meetings, it's all professional. I submitted the divorce paperwork and set my phone down. Professional. Right. Is that what you call it when you book hotel rooms together? When you delete text messages at midnight? When you start wearing perfume to work but not for your own husband? You've been spying on me? I've been watching my wife act like a stranger for 6 months. The spying was just confirming what I already knew. I stood up and headed toward the stairs. I'm going to bed, in the guest room. I suggest you call Roger and let him know his baby mama might need a place to stay soon. This is still my house, too, she called after me. I paused on the bottom step. Actually, it's my house, my name on the deed, my credit score that qualified for the mortgage, my down payment from selling my condo. You just live here, or lived here. Past tense might be more accurate now. I could hear her crying as I climbed the stairs, but it sounded more like frustration than heartbreak. She wasn't sorry about the affair. She was sorry about getting caught. There's a difference, and after 12 years in IT security, I'd learned to spot the difference between genuine remorse and damage control. The guest room felt strange and familiar at the same time. I'd been sleeping there more often lately anyway, telling myself it was because of Marin's new habit of taking work calls at all hours. Now I knew those calls weren't work-related. I lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, processing everything that had just happened. 6 hours ago, I'd been a married man looking forward to a romantic anniversary cruise. Now, I was a soon-to-be divorced man whose wife was pregnant with another man's child. The smart thing would be to feel devastated, betrayed, heartbroken. Instead, I felt something else entirely, something cold and calculating and perfectly clear. If Marin wanted to play games with people's lives, I was about to show her how someone with my particular skill set played back. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd make my first move. And unlike my wife, I believed in giving people the information they deserved to have. I woke up at 5:30, same as always. The house was quiet. Marin's car was already gone from the driveway, probably rushing off to tell Roger about our conversation last night, strategizing about damage control. Perfect. That gave me time to prepare. I made coffee and fired up my laptop, diving into our shared cloud storage, with the thoroughness that had made me one of the best cybersecurity specialists in Dallas. Marin thought she'd been clever, deleting messages and clearing browser history. She didn't realize that everything synced automatically to our family account, creating a digital trail that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Hotel reservations under both their names, calendar entries for client meetings that corresponded perfectly with restaurant charges on her credit card. Text messages that had been deleted from her phone but remained archived in the cloud, including some that made my skin crawl. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. From 3 weeks ago. Tell your wife you're working late. I need you tonight. From last month. What if she finds out? From Marin, followed by, she won't. She's too busy with her computers to notice real life. From Roger. That last one stung, but it also crystallized something important. They thought I was oblivious, harmless. Just another tech nerd who lived in his digital world while real people made real decisions around him. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I printed everything. Screenshots, receipts, calendar entries, message threads, the kind of documentation that would hold up in court, or more importantly, in the court of public opinion. Then I drove to Bledsoe's office complex, a gleaming steel and glass monument to healthcare administration success. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave me time to rehearse my approach. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would get me arrested or banned from the building. Just a simple conversation between two men about their shared interest in Marin's pregnancy. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a practiced smile, looked up as I approached her desk. "Good morning. I'm here to see Roger Bledsoe. I'm Tanner Jossman, Marin's husband." Her smile flickered slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I think he'll want to see me. It's about some wonderful news we'd like to share with him personally." She made a quick phone call, speaking in hushed tones. After a moment, she hung up and pointed toward a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. "He'll see you now." I walked across the open workspace, noting how several employees looked up from their desks. Good. Witnesses were important for what came next. Roger's office was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, framed awards, a view that probably cost more per month than most people's salaries. Roger himself stood behind his desk, tall and confident in his perfectly tailored suit. Everything about him screamed success and entitlement, but he wasn't alone. A woman sat in one of the chairs facing his desk, her back to me. Blonde hair in an elegant updo, designer handbag, the kind of understated jewelry that whispered rather than shouted about money. She turned as I entered, and I saw a face that belonged on magazine covers, beautiful, poised, and currently showing the early glow of pregnancy. "Tanner," Roger said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected. I'd like you to meet Jillian Kincaid, my fiancée. Jillian, this is Tanner Jossman. He works with Marin." Works with Marin. Not married to Marin. Interesting choice of words. "Actually," I said, stepping forward with my hand extended, "I am married to Marin, though apparently not exclusively." I shook Jillian's hand, noting how her grip was firm and her eyes were sharp. "Congratulations on your engagement and your pregnancy. When are you due?" Jillian smiled, but something cautious flickered in her expression. "Thank you. We're expecting in February." "How wonderful. Marin's due around the same time. What a coincidence." I turned to Roger, whose face had gone slightly pale. "Speaking of which, congratulations, Roger. Marin told me last night that you were the first person she told about the pregnancy. She said you deserved to know before anyone else, even her husband." The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jillian's head turned slowly toward Roger, her smile freezing in place. "I'm sorry," she said carefully, "but I think there might be some confusion. Roger mentioned that one of his employees was expecting, but—" "Oh, there's no confusion," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the screenshots I'd prepared. "Would you like to see the hotel reservations? They're quite romantic. The Adolphus downtown, the Four Seasons in Austin, always booked under both their names." I held the phone toward Jillian, who stared at the screen like it might bite her. Roger finally found his voice. "Tanner, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Marin is a valued employee, and yes, we've traveled together for business purposes." "Business purposes," I repeated, scrolling to another screenshot. "Is that what you call it when she texts you things like, 'I can still taste you on my lips after your Austin conference'? Because I have to say, that seems like a very personal approach to employee relations." Jillian stood up so abruptly that her chair rolled backward. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that my wife announced her pregnancy to her lover before she told her husband. I'm saying that your fiancé has been having an affair with my wife for at least 6 months. And I'm saying that one of you is carrying his child, but I'm betting it's not the one wearing the wedding ring he gave you." Roger stepped around his desk, his face flushed with anger. "You need to leave. Now, before I call security." "Actually, I think I'll stay for the conversation you're about to have with your pregnant fiancé about your pregnant mistress. This should be educational." I looked at Jillian, who was staring at Roger with an expression that could have melted steel. "Did you know about Marin? About any of this?" "Get out," Roger said again, but his voice cracked slightly. Jillian held up one perfectly manicured hand. "No, let him talk." She turned to me, her composure remarkable considering the bomb I'd just dropped. "You have proof of this affair?" I handed her my phone. Months of it. Text messages, hotel records, credit card receipts. Your fiancé has been very thorough in documenting his relationship with my wife. She scrolled through the screenshots, her face growing paler with each swipe. Behind her, Roger was making small, desperate sounds like a trapped animal. "Jillian, sweetheart, let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. "Explain how you've been screwing your employee while I've been planning our wedding. Explain how you got her pregnant while I'm carrying your child. Which explanation would you like to start with?" The office had gone completely silent. Through the glass walls, I could see other employees pretending to work, while obviously straining to hear every word. "This is all a misunderstanding," Roger said weakly. "Tanner is obviously upset about something and—" "The dates," Jillian interrupted, still scrolling through my phone. "These hotel stays, these messages, they match up with your business trips. The ones where you said you were too busy to call me." She looked up at him, and I saw something cold and final in her eyes. "You piece of garbage." She threw my phone at him, and he fumbled to catch it, nearly dropping it in his panic. "Jillian, please, we can work this out. The baby, our future." "Our future?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What future? The one where you keep a pregnant mistress on the side. The one where I find out about your affairs from her husband, instead of from you." I cleared my throat. "Actually, if I could have my phone back, I have copies of everything, but I'd rather not leave the originals with someone who might be tempted to delete evidence." Roger handed it over without looking at me, his attention focused entirely on Jillian, who was gathering her purse and jacket. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Away from you." She paused at the door and looked back at me. "Thank you for telling me. I wish someone had done it sooner." "My pleasure," I said. "Oh, and Roger, Marin doesn't know I'm here yet. I thought you should have a chance to figure out how you're going to explain this to her before she finds out that your fiancé knows everything. Professional courtesy, one father to another." Jillian made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob and walked out. Through the glass walls, I watched her stride across the office floor, every eye following her exit. Roger slumped into his chair, his face in his hands. "You have no idea what you've just done." "Actually, I know exactly what I've done. I've given everyone the information they deserve to have. Your fiancé deserved to know about your affair. I deserve to know about my wife's pregnancy announcement protocol. And you deserve to know that your secret isn't secret anymore." I headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and congratulations again on the baby. I hope you're ready to be a single father because something tells me your support system just walked out." I left him sitting there and walked back through the office, nodding pleasantly to the employees who were no longer pretending not to stare. By the time I reached the elevator, I could hear Roger's voice through his office door, probably calling Marin to warn her that their perfect little arrangement had just exploded. The elevator doors closed, and I allowed myself a small smile. Round one was complete, and it had gone better than I'd hoped. But this was just the opening move. Marin wanted to play games with people's lives? Fine, but she was about to learn that I'd been studying the rules a lot longer than she had. My phone started ringing before I even made it to my car. Marin's name flashed on the screen, and I could practically feel the rage radiating through the device. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message as I drove back toward my office. "What the hell did you just do? Roger called me, and he's furious. He says you went to his office and told his fiancé a bunch of lies about us. Tanner, I swear, if you've ruined my career over your paranoid fantasies, I will destroy you. Call me back right now." paranoid fantasies. That was rich, coming from someone who'd been playing house with her boss for half a year. I saved the voicemail, evidence was always useful, and drove to my office in the tech park on the north side of Dallas. Jossman Security Solutions occupied a modest suite in a building full of IT companies, consulting firms, and the kind of businesses that thrived on other people's digital problems. My assistant, Kelly, looked up as I walked in. "You're early today, and you look like someone who just won the lottery." Something like that. I headed toward my office, then stopped. "Kelly, do you know any good divorce attorneys? Asking for a friend?" She raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay at home?" "Everything's about to be a lot more honest at home, which is probably the same thing." I spent the morning working on client projects, but my mind kept drifting to the next phase of my plan. Roger would warn Marin, and she'd come back swinging. That was fine. I was counting on it. Sure enough, she was waiting in our driveway when I got home that evening. Her car was parked at an aggressive angle, blocking my usual spot. She climbed out as I pulled up, her face flushed with anger. "We need to talk," she announced, before I'd even turned off the engine. "I agree. Let's start with how you managed to get pregnant by your boss while married to me. I'm curious about the logistics." She followed me to the front door, her heels clicking angrily on the concrete. "You went to Roger's office. You told his fiancée lies about me, about us. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I unlocked the door and stepped inside, not bothering to hold it for her. I told her the truth. "There's a difference, though. I understand how you might have trouble recognizing it." "The truth?" She slammed the door behind her. "The truth is that you're having some kind of breakdown. Roger is my boss, nothing more. Yes, we work closely together. Yes, we travel for business. But that doesn't mean—" "Marin!" I turned to face her, pulling out my phone. "Would you like me to read your text messages out loud? Because I have them all, every single one, including the ones where you complained about how boring I am in bed compared to him." Her face went white, then red, then white again. "You hacked my phone?" "I didn't have to hack anything. We share a cloud account, remember? The one you insisted we set up for convenience? Turns out it's very convenient for tracking your affair." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating, trying to figure out how much I actually knew. "Okay," she said finally. "Maybe Roger and I got too close. Maybe we crossed some lines, but it's not what you think. It's not some sordid affair. You're pregnant with his child. You don't know that. Actually, I do, because we haven't been intimate since January, and you're showing signs of a pregnancy that's at least 12 weeks along. The math isn't complicated, even for someone as boring as me." She sat down heavily on our couch, her defiance cracking. "It just happened, Tanner. We were working late, there was stress, and one thing led to another. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to keep doing it for 6 months. It meant enough for you to tell him about the pregnancy before your own husband. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. So you decided to tell your lover first? That was your solution?" She started crying, but I'd seen her cry before when she wanted something. This felt more like tactical tears than genuine remorse. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can get divorced." I sat down across from her, keeping my voice calm. "Which is what I filed for yesterday. You should be getting served with papers any day now." The tears stopped immediately. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You're pregnant with another man's child, Marin. What exactly did you think was going to happen? That I'd just pretend it was mine and raise Roger's baby while you continued your affair? It's over with Roger. Jillian found out, and she's threatening to leave him. He's furious with both of us. He says he can't see me anymore." I almost laughed. "So, you're only ending the affair because his fiancée caught you? Not because you realized you were destroying your marriage?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." I stood up and headed toward the kitchen. "I'm going to make dinner. You're welcome to join me, but we're not discussing reconciliation. That ship sailed when you decided Roger deserved to know about his child before I did. She followed me, her tears replaced by anger. Fine. You want to be stubborn? You want to throw away 12 years of marriage over one mistake? Then let's see how that works out for you. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not going down without a fight. Her voice had gone cold, calculating. You think you can embarrass me at my workplace and then just walk away? You think you can destroy my relationship with Roger and face no consequences? Your relationship with Roger was already destroyed. I just made sure his fiancée knew about it. We'll see about that. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm staying at my sister's tonight. Don't wait up. After she left, I sat in our kitchen and thought about her threat. Marin wasn't the type to go quietly, and she had connections in the legal community through her work. She'd probably try to freeze assets, claim I was abusive or unstable, maybe even try to get a restraining order. The smart thing would be to prepare for that. The smarter thing would be to make my next move before she had a chance to make hers. I opened my laptop and started researching. HR policies at her hospital group, public records for Roger's engagement announcement, social media profiles for his fiancée. If Marin wanted to escalate this, I'd be ready. But first, I had some phone calls to make, starting with the HR department at her hospital and ending with a certain pregnant socialite who probably had some very interesting questions about her fiancé's employment practices. The game was just getting started. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Marin had been busy overnight, and apparently so had her lawyer. The messages started reasonable and escalated quickly into threats. The last few were from someone claiming to represent her legal interests, demanding I cease all contact with her workplace and stop harassing her colleagues. I made coffee and called my own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Henley, who specialized in high-asset divorces. I'd found her through a recommendation from a client whose own messy separation had required someone who understood both technology and tactics. Tanner, Patricia answered on the second ring. I got your paperwork yesterday. Interesting case. Your wife's already filed a counter motion claiming emotional distress and requesting emergency spousal support. That was fast. She's also claiming you've been stalking her at work and harassing her supervisor. Her attorney wants a restraining order. I laughed, which probably wasn't the reaction Patricia expected. Let me guess. She's claiming I'm unstable and dangerous? Something like that. What exactly did you do at her workplace? I explained my visit to Roger's office, including the presence of his pregnant fiancée and the documentation I'd shared. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. Well, she said when I finished, that's either brilliant or completely insane, possibly both. Do you have copies of this evidence? Extensive copies, screenshots, hotel records, credit card statements, text messages, everything time-stamped and verified. Good, because we're going to need it all. Her attorney is painting you as a jealous husband who's creating elaborate fantasies to justify his own failures as a spouse. His own failures? I felt my temper spike. She's pregnant with another man's child, which she's denying. According to her filing, you're the father, and your accusations about her supervisor are the product of paranoid delusion brought on by work stress and marital problems. I stared out my office window, watching early commuters hurry across the parking lot. She's claiming the baby is mine? Emphatically. She's also requesting that you be required to pay for prenatal care and prohibited from discussing her private medical information with anyone, including her coworkers. Can she do that? She can try. The question is whether a judge will believe her version or yours. That's where your documentation becomes crucial. We spent the next hour going through my evidence, with Patricia making notes about what would hold up in court and what might be considered circumstantial. By the time we hung up, I had a clear picture of what I was facing. Marin wasn't just denying the affair. She was going on the offensive, painting me as an unstable husband who'd snapped under pressure and started making wild accusations. It was actually a smart strategy, if you ignored the minor detail that everything I'd said was true. I spent the morning organizing my evidence into a comprehensive timeline, cross-referencing dates and locations with the precision I usually reserved for security audits. Hotel stays matched with her business trips. Restaurant charges corresponded with her client dinners. Text messages provided context for everything else. By lunch, I had a dossier that would make a private investigator proud. But I also had a problem. Patricia had warned me about contacting Marin's workplace again, and I needed to be careful not to give her ammunition for harassment claims. That's when I remembered Jillian. Roger's pregnant fiancée had seemed like a smart woman, and she'd definitely been interested in the truth about her future husband's extracurricular activities. More importantly, she wasn't bound by the same legal constraints that limited my actions. I found her contact information through the social media profiles I'd researched the night before. Jillian Kincaid, event planner, charity board member, and recently enlightened about her fiancé's character. Her business had a website with a contact form, professional but approachable. I sent a carefully worded message explaining that I had additional information she might find useful, along with my phone number. Then I waited. She called within an hour. "Mr. Jossman, this is Jillian Kincaid. I got your message. Thank you for calling. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. I hope you're doing well considering the circumstances." "I've been better." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the strain underneath. "You mentioned additional information?" "I do. But first I should ask, have you spoken with Roger since yesterday?" "Briefly. He tried to convince me that you're some kind of unstable person who's making up stories about him and your wife. He said you've been harassing people at his office. And what do you think?" There was a pause. "I think the evidence you showed me was pretty compelling. Hotel records don't lie, and those text messages were definitely not professional communications. There's more, a lot more, but I'm in a delicate position legally. My wife's attorney is claiming I'm harassing her workplace. I can't go back to Roger's office without risking legal problems. But I can. You could, if you wanted to. I'm not asking you to do anything, but if you were interested in learning more about your fiancé's relationship with my wife, I might be able to help you ask the right questions." Another pause, longer this time. "What kind of questions?" "Questions about expense reports for business trips that weren't business trips. Questions about calendar entries that don't match official company meetings. Questions about whether the HR department knows that a supervisor has been having an affair with a subordinate who's now pregnant." "HR doesn't know?" "Not officially, but they might be very interested to learn about it, especially if the information came from a concerned citizen rather than from the wronged husband." "I see." I could almost hear her thinking. "And you have documentation of all this?" "Extensive documentation. Time-stamped, verified, legally obtained from shared accounts and public records." "Can you send it to me?" "I can. But Jillian, and I hope you don't mind me using your first name, you should know that once you have this information, you can't unknow it. And if you decide to act on it, there's no going back." "There's already no going back," she said quietly. "Roger destroyed that possibility when he decided to get my employee pregnant while I was planning our wedding. I sent her everything. The complete timeline, the hotel records, the text messages, the credit card statements, everything that painted a picture of a 6-month affair between a supervisor and his subordinate, culminating in a pregnancy that the subordinate had announced to her lover before her husband. An hour later, she called me back. "This is worse than I thought," she said. "The timeline, the frequency of contact, the fact that he was using company resources for personal trips with her. I'm sorry, I know this can't be easy to see. Actually, it is easy. It's clear, documented, and actionable, which is exactly what I need right now. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure the right people have the right information, starting with HR and ending with anyone else who might be interested in Roger's management style." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole mess started. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation with Marin, but hope that the truth would actually matter, that actions would have consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Judge denied the restraining order. Insufficient evidence of harassment. Proceed carefully, but proceed. I smiled and started planning my next move. Marin wanted to play legal games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been documenting everything a lot longer than she'd been covering it up. The call came at 8 in the morning, 3 days after I'd sent Jillian the complete documentation package. Marin's name flashed on my phone screen, but when I answered, the voice was pure rage. "You destroyed everything," she hissed. "Roger's been suspended pending an HR investigation. They're reviewing every business trip we took together, every expense report, every interaction we had. His engagement is over." Jillian threw her ring at him in the hospital lobby in front of everyone. "Good morning to you too," I said, settling back in my office chair. "I take it yesterday didn't go well for you?" "Don't play dumb. You sent her everything, didn't you? All your so-called evidence, all your carefully crafted lies." "I didn't send Jillian anything she didn't deserve to have, just like I didn't tell her anything that wasn't true." "Roger says you're trying to destroy his career out of spite." "Roger's destroying his own career. I'm just making sure the right people know about it." There was a pause, and when Marin spoke again, her voice had changed tactics. "Tanner, please. This has gone too far. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I handled things badly. But you're ruining innocent people's lives." "Innocent people?" I laughed. "Marin, you're pregnant with your boss's child. He was cheating on his pregnant fiancée with you. In what universe are either of you innocent?" "The baby is not my problem. You made that clear when you told Roger about it before you told me. I want to come home. We need to talk about this properly, work things out." "You can't come home. I had the locks changed yesterday." Another pause, longer this time. "You can't keep me out of my own house." "Actually, I can. The house is in my name, bought with my down payment, financed with my credit. You're welcome to challenge that in court, but until then, you're trespassing if you show up without permission." "This is insane. You can't just—" "I can, and I did. Your clothes are packed and sitting on the front porch. I suggest you pick them up before it rains." She hung up on me, but I knew that wasn't the end of it. Marin didn't give up easily, especially when she felt cornered. Sure enough, my phone rang again 20 minutes later. This time, it was Patricia. "Your wife's attorney just filed an emergency motion for temporary housing and support," she said without preamble. "They're claiming you've illegally evicted her and are attempting to coerce her into dropping legitimate harassment claims." "Can they make that stick?" "Depends on the judge. The house ownership is clear, but she's been living there for years and she's pregnant. Some judges might view this as punitive rather than protective. What do you recommend?" "Be prepared to let her back in temporarily, but document everything. And Tanner, whatever you're planning next, run it by me first. Your wife's attorney is looking for any excuse to paint you as vindictive and unstable." I hung up and considered my options. Marin was escalating, which meant I needed to escalate too. But Patricia was right. I had to be smart about it. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Jillian. Can we meet? I have news." We met at a coffee shop in downtown Dallas, neutral territory where neither of us would be accused of inappropriate contact. Jillian looked tired but determined, her pregnancy showing more now that she wasn't trying to hide it. "Roger's been fired," she said without preamble. "HR finished their investigation yesterday. Abuse of company resources, inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, violation of ethics policies. He's out." "And Marin?" "Suspended without pay pending their own investigation into her conduct. Apparently, she claimed the affair was unwanted attention from a supervisor, but the text messages you provided tell a different story." I felt a grim satisfaction. She tried to claim harassment? Right up until they showed her the messages where she was initiating contact and making plans to meet him. Hard to claim harassment when you're the one suggesting hotel rooms. What about you? How are you handling all this? Jillian smiled, but it was sharp-edged. I'm pregnant, single, and angrier than I've ever been in my life. But I'm also free of a man who would have kept lying to me for the rest of our marriage. Any regrets about getting involved? None. Roger made his choices, and so did your wife. They just didn't expect anyone to hold them accountable. We talked for another hour, sharing war stories and comparing notes on our respective legal situations. By the time we parted ways, I had a clearer picture of what was happening on the other side of this mess. Roger was scrambling to salvage his career and his reputation. Marin was trying to play victim while simultaneously demanding spousal support and housing rights. Both of them were learning that actions had consequences, even for people who thought they were too smart to get caught. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Mr. Jossman, this is Linda Crawford from the hospital HR department. I understand you have some additional information that might be relevant to our investigation." I smiled and opened my laptop. "Actually, I do. How much time do you have?" By the time that conversation ended, I'd provided HR with a complete timeline of the affair, including evidence of company resources being used for personal trips and documentation of policy violations that went far beyond simple workplace romance. When I got home that evening, Marin's clothes were gone from the front porch, but there was a note tucked under my door. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." I crumpled up the note and threw it away. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But she was wrong about who was winning. I'd spent 12 years married to someone who thought she was smarter than everyone around her. Now she was about to learn what happened when she underestimated the boring computer guy who'd been paying attention all along. The next phase would be the hardest, but also the most satisfying, because Marin still thought this was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about consequences, and consequences, unlike revenge, had a way of lasting. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, reviewing the final divorce settlement. Marin had fought every single point, but documentation had a way of cutting through legal maneuvering. "She's agreed to everything," Patricia said, sliding the papers across her desk. "No spousal support, no claim on the house, no shared custody of any future children. In exchange, you're not pursuing damages for adultery or seeking reimbursement for the money she spent on her affair." And the paternity test? Confirms what we already knew. Roger Bledsoe is the father. Marin's attorney tried to argue that it didn't matter since the child was conceived during your marriage, but the judge wasn't sympathetic to that argument given the circumstances. I signed the papers, officially ending 12 years of marriage with the stroke of a pen. It felt anticlimactic, but also liberating. "What about Roger and Marin now?" Patricia smiled. "That's the interesting part. Apparently Roger's new job, at a much smaller hospital for significantly less money, came with a strict no-fraternization policy. And Marin's new position in medical administration required her to relocate to Houston. Funny how these things work out. They're not together? According to my sources, they can barely stand to be in the same room. Turns out that relationships built on deception don't handle public scrutiny very well." I left Patricia's office and drove home to my quiet house. The place felt different now, cleaner, somehow. Like I'd finally gotten rid of something that had been poisoning the air. My phone buzzed with a text from Jillian. "Saw the news about your divorce being final. Congratulations on your freedom." I texted back, "Thank you. How are you doing?" "Better every day. The baby's healthy, and I'm building a new life that doesn't include liars. It's amazing how much energy you have when you're not constantly wondering what's true." She was right about that. For the first time in months, I felt like I could think clearly, plan for the future, maybe even trust someone again eventually. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer and thought about everything that had happened. Marin had wanted to play games with people's lives, thinking she was smart enough to manage multiple relationships without consequences. She'd been wrong about that. just like she'd been wrong about me. I wasn't the boring computer guy who would sit quietly while his life was dismantled around him. I was the boring computer guy who documented everything, planned carefully, and understood that information was power. In the end, that had made all the difference. My phone rang one last time. Marin's number flashed on the screen, and for a moment I considered answering. Then I blocked the number and deleted her contact information. Some conversations weren't worth having. Some people weren't worth the energy. I had better things to do with my life than waste time on someone who'd already proven she wasn't worth my time. The real father had heard about the pregnancy first, just like she'd wanted. Now he could deal with everything that came after. I was done cleaning up other people's messes.